crew is ready to go. Tons of football conversation today as we kick off this weekend with a fascinating game tonight. And there's the squad. Adam Schefter is on the phone. The most exciting words in televised sports. Shefty will have the latest. And Neek and Lou and D-Wood are all ready to go. Let's get it started because we've got a game tonight. Niners and Packers. We hope the 49ers have placed 4 players on the reserve COVID list and declared all 4 out for tonight's game against Green Bay. And their names, you know, it's Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Kendrick Bourne, and the left tackle, Trent Williams. That to go along with all the injuries they've suffered. Look at this. When these teams played each other in the NFC Championship game, which was not that long ago, these are the 7 players who touched the football for the 49ers that night. None of them are available tonight. San Francisco used 3 running backs in that game. They ran all over Green Bay. They had 285 yards on the ground. But again, none of them, the quarterback, the receivers, none of them will play tonight. So here is Adam Schefter, who's obviously working the news right up to the final moment. Shefty, what is the very latest as far as the status of tonight's game?
Greeny, the show goes on, and even though the last season's NFC Championship game featured all these star players who will not be playing tonight, the NFL has a game scheduled in the primetime window, and it's not going to shift the game off that primetime window. There's going to be Thursday night football between these 2 particular teams. Again, I asked one official last night what was the chance that this game would be rescheduled. They said 0.0%. Now, I don't think that's exactly accurate because for all we know today, there could be additional positive tests, and that could influence the thinking. But as it currently stands this morning and as it was last night, the game was on track to be played. The Packers left Wisconsin yesterday afternoon. They flew to the Bay Area. They spent the night in the Bay Area, and everybody believes this game tonight is happening.
Okay, so that's the first piece of the news today. There's another pretty big piece of news, and that is that the Detroit Lions, who play Minnesota this weekend, their quarterback, Matt Stafford, finds himself on the COVID reserve list as well. What is the latest there? This has obviously all kinds of implications for the game, including, we should point out, fantasy implications and other things. What is the latest on Matt Stafford?
Matthew Stafford was deemed a high-risk, close contact person to a non-team member that does have COVID. And that happened on Monday when Matthew Stafford came into contact with that particular person. And so Tuesday, obviously, was when he was deemed high risk. He was placed on the reserve COVID-19 list, and now he must go through 5 days of testing. Assuming there are no positive tests for 5 straight days, he would be eligible to come off the reserve COVID-19 list this weekend in time to start Sunday's game against the Minnesota Vikings. In the interim, he will not be able to practice this week. So Matthew Stafford, if he does play, which is the sense and the belief and the expectation, it would be without any practice this week, which is not ideal. Chase Daniel has been the Lions quarterback taking the reps in practice this week. Chase Daniel would be the guy that would start if Matthew Stafford can't. But as long as he doesn't test positive, Matthew Stafford will be the Lions quarterback under center Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings.
This is such an unusual season, but that is the latest there, and obviously something we'll keep a close eye on. Shefty, excellent. Meantime, here's the top news from the league yesterday. The Bucs' new receiver, Antonio Brown, speaking to the media for the first time since returning from his suspension after going through his first practice as a Buc and expressing gratitude for the opportunity to join a team after being away from the game for a year and a half. Here's AB.
I'm really grateful to be here with such great organization, to be around some great players. For me, first and foremost, being away from the game a year and a half, to be able to be a part of the process and be out there with the guys today was surreal, something I don't take for granted, something I have a great appreciation for, a better perspective about, a lot of gratification. To do what I love, man, it's a blessing. I feel like I'm a better person. I want to say I'm a different person, but I'm a better person.
So those are the things he said. Here's the crowd I have with me this morning. Again, it is Neek, and it is Lewis, and it is D-Wood, and Shefty working it. Neek, what did you hear there from Antonio Brown?
I mean, he passed the first test. It wasn't a very difficult test. It was more like a worksheet or something. It wasn't too hard. He just had to say the right things, and there's going to be a microscope on him, everything he says and does, as long as he is down there in Tampa Bay. And so far, he's said the right things, that he's grateful and he feels like he has changed a bit, maybe even matured. So I don't know that it was a high bar, but he cleared it.
So they play the biggest game of the weekend. I should remind everyone, in case you're not following, obviously it's been a busy news week. This is the weekend that they play New Orleans again. And the Saints already have banked a win in that division. That's the Sunday night game this week. Louis Riddick, realistically, how much should we expect Antonio Brown to be involved in the game Sunday night?
I think it's all going to depend, Greeny, on his week of practice and what kind of conditioning he shows, how he feels the next day and the next day and the next day, because we all know that it's all about recovery, especially when you've been off from football for a while and haven't gone through a full practice. We've all been there. You know what kind of muscle soreness you experience. But I think, you know, his relationship with Tom Brady and his relationship with the number of people that they have on that staff in particular that have been around him when he was in Pittsburgh will kind of expedite this process. I think it's something where if he feels good and he's catching passes and this offense is rolling, you'll see him more. You know, and I think a lot of it will be dictated by game conditions as well. The tighter the game, the more productive he is, the more he's going to be out there. If they start blowing him out, if it's one of those games where they get a 2-3 touchdown lead, and he's maybe feeling a little bit of soreness, you'll see him pull him off. Look, he didn't sign there for them to ease him into it. I mean, they're right in the thick of it now, so they need his production on the field. So I think it's all going to be dictated by game conditions.
We're going to take a little closer look at this game a little bit later in the show because it is the most important game of the weekend. But yesterday, Bruce Arians said, hey, he might play 10 plays, he might play 35 plays. D. Wood, if you had to bet on it, would you guess it'll be closer to 10 or closer to 35 for AB?
I would think most closer to 35. And I think Lewis, made a good point. It just depends on the conditions during the game. AB is one thing we know about AB is, regardless of what you hear about off the field, this guy's always been a consummate pro as far as his practice habits, staying in great shape. So I anticipate him coming in, feet to the ground and hitting the ground running. So if the game conditions say that, you know what, he's feeling good, things are working out, and we need him, then they're going to keep feeding it to him. And like Lewis said, I think everything's going to be predicated on the game conditions.
Schefter, what do you think?
Well, listen, Chris Godwin was back at practice yesterday, and before his surgery a couple of weeks ago, doctors told him that he could miss 4 to 6 weeks. After the surgery, they revised their opinions and said it's a week-to-week deal, and now he's back at practice. One of the reasons this team signed Antonio Brown is because Mike Evans has been dealing with an ankle injury. Chris Godwin had the fractured finger. Scotty Miller hasn't been entirely healthy, and they wanted somebody to be able to step in to be healthy at all times. Now, Antonio Brown is the ultimate luxury toy. But the thing here also is that there's no guaranteed money in his contract. They need him to be on his best behavior. They are aware of his past and his history. And if there's any missteps, any transgressions at all, they will simply move away from him at that particular moment. But as it currently stands, he adds great depth. He adds great talent. He gives them an element that they could use, and they will be a better offense for it.
No, that seems right. D. Wood is the one who's been in an offensive huddle here. I'll often hear quarterbacks say every receiver thinks he's open on every single play. They've got